Cup fans, it's been a minute, but listen, I have news for you guys. Also, on top of that, let's talk about what we learned about the Chicago Cubs over the White Sox series. Definitely want to recap that, talk about that, and my biggest concern as we continue to head towards the playoffs. Even with all the wins, even with all the victories, the Chicago Cubs still have things they need to figure out. This is a big one. We'll talk about all this and more right after this. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Chicago Cubs Central, your number one spot for all things Chicago Cubs. Listen, I'm your host, Mike Jones. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe so that you never miss any of the content we have right here on Chicago Cubs Central. So listen, guys, the Chicago Cubs wrapped up a series with the Chicago White Sox on today, a little bit earlier today. And listen, man, I just want to say, this and I'm talking about Chicago Wrigley and Chicago Rate Field. This was probably one of the most fun series I can remember between these two teams. I mean, it had everything: walk-offs, it had multiple home run games, it had the coming of age of stars such as Murakami. Obviously PCA doing his thing at Wrigley. It had the drama of PCA getting into the argument, the fight with the young lady, the White Sox fan that was talking trash to him. I mean, literally, I just this gave me 2008, 2007, Lou Piniella, Ozzie Guillen. It gave me, 2004, 2003. Dusty Baker, obviously, Ozzie Guillen, vibes of the Chicago Cubs and the White Sox really, really battling it out to see who would be number one. And of course, not everybody can be happy about that. Not everybody always wins. But the Chicago Cubs remain the number one team in Chicago right now. Like I said, the record proves it. The stats prove it, but the White Sox are not far behind. They do have some things that they need to work on, but the White Sox are not far behind the Chicago Cubs in what they need to do to accomplish being the better team, or like I said, I mean, or being able to catch up with the Chicago Cubs. And I talked about the White Sox a lot because obviously me and Kev do the crosstown conversations, and I've given the White Sox credit all year long. I told people a couple things about the White Sox, and literally all this has come true. I told them Chicago White Sox, we're not going to lose 100 games this year. I told them Chicago White Sox should have aspirations of at least being a wild card team, but with some of the sneaky moves they made, especially signing Murakami, that they should be looking to try to fight for the division crown too. Now, albeit at that time, I did not know Detroit was going to have the season that they were going to have. I did not know that, that Murakami was going to have the season that he had, and that Vargas and Colson Montgomery were also going to make a three-headed monster that would help the Chicago White Sox. But yeah, man, like I said, for me, in my eyes, I'm looking at the White Sox and I'm saying to myself that this is a team on the come up. I don't know that their current manager is the manager that's going to help them in the future. As of right now, he's doing okay, but he also makes some boneheaded decisions too that you kind of have to question. But all in all, again, this White Sox club is looking fierce, and like I said, I do think, and I do think that they have an opportunity to make some noise, but they also exposed some things about the Chicago Cubs. And it started with me watching the games, but it also started with me earlier this morning listening to the Mully and Ha on 104.3, The Score. And I feel like they were pro White Sox, negative Cubs. But one thing that they brought up about the Chicago Cubs was that the Chicago Cubs suffer in the runs category. These games, let's just take it back to game one. Game one, the Chicago Cubs had 14 hits in that game. However, the Chicago Cubs had to win that game in a walk-off. That's guys being left on base. That's guys not being able to drive in the runs. That's the back end of the order, which actually some games are pretty fairly good for the Chicago Cubs. Just leaving guys being left on base, man. Leaving free cheese out there. This is a concern for me and should be for all of you too, because the Chicago Cubs are going to run into the postseason where they're gonna need clutch hitting. Now, albeit they got it when they needed it most to win these games and be successful over the Chicago White Sox, but they still at the same time could have been put the White Sox away in this series. And it's not just this series. If you actually look at the totality of the Chicago Cubs season, a lot of the games that they lost were games that really they should have won. Very rarely in the 2026 season did the Chicago Cubs just come out straight out flat and not able to hit at all. Most times when the Chicago Cubs lost, it was because they couldn't they either didn't get the run support that they needed, or their pitcher gave the game away. They had to score more than enough runs to win the game, but the pitcher gave the game away. This is an issue that we're going to run into in the postseason, guys. And this is my concern. Run support for the Chicago Cubs. Now, again, I believe they can get the hits. They've shown you they can get the hits. They've also shown you that they can be an explosive offense. The problem lies in, okay, guys, where are we right now? Where are the Chicago Cubs right now when it comes down to them being able to compete with the Dodgers? Can they score enough runs to beat the Dodgers? Can they score enough runs to beat the Brewers? Can they score enough runs to beat the Braves? They still play the Braves again. They have another series with the Braves in September, and they play the Brewers 7 more times. So we will see, and we will get a taste of what the Chicago Cubs have to offer as far as being them being that type of team. I mean, it's up to them to show us what they are capable of. The Chicago Cubs need to absolutely figure out the right lineup, the right order, and the right players that can absolutely drive in these runs. In the postseason, guys, we need to not focus on people's feelings. We need to focus on the guys that can produce runs and the guys that can produce outs. Outs defensively, runs offensively. And that needs to be Craig Counsell's main focus. We need to make sure that we enable ourselves the ability to beat these teams handily. So we watched in the Monday night game the bases be loaded 2 different occasions, and the Chicago Cubs come up empty due to Miguel Amaya's inability to be able to hit. I mean, like I said, it's just one of those things where, you know, you can't even blame Ian Happ. He since probably the last 2 weeks of in August has upped his gameplay. But that back part of of the order has to come through. They absolutely have to come through. It's imperative that they do so in order for the Chicago Cubs to have the success that they need to have. I love the walkout. I love the walk off. I love the dramatics of it. But these games never should have even been close. None of them. The White Sox aren't a better team than the Chicago Cubs. And the fact that you had to struggle with a pitcher like Eric Fetty says everything that you need to know about what's going on with the Chicago White Sox. I'm sorry, with the Chicago Cubs. The White Sox should feel pretty good about themselves being able to have Fetty come in and give them what he's given them. But as far as the Cubs go, guys, I mean, they have to get out of their own way, and they have to be able to score runs. They could win these games handily. They could be resting their starting pitchers by the 5th inning. They could be allowing their bullpen to do the heavy lifting. But because because they struggle to score runs and drive in runs, that is the problem. That is why they are having all of these close games. A lot of these games the Cubs are playing should not even be close right now. And that's something that they're going to have to fix going into the postseason. We have to score runs and beat teams handily. If you look at the Milwaukee Brewers, that's one thing they do. We'll see the Mariners after them. The Mariners got beat Tuesday night 22-0. Take advantage of the teams that you're supposed to beat. Beat the teams you're supposed to beat. Don't lay a goose eggs for teams that you know that you're better than. And the Chicago Cubs are better than the Seattle Mariners. The Chicago Cubs are better than the Chicago White Sox. The Chicago Cubs are better than a lot of these teams that we're going to see over the next couple of weeks. And to be quite frank with you, they're better than the Cardinals, the team that they lost this weekend to. Pitching let us down in that one. But the Chicago Cubs have so much to offer. And in order for them to be able to see the success of the World Series, it can't just be all reliant on the defense. You've got to be able to score some runs too, and maximize scoring the runs when you have them. When you got men on first and second with no outs, you've got to be able to drive those runs in. That's the only way that you're going to be able to win in the postseason. Well, that's my time, folks. Give me your thoughts on the Chicago Cubs and their inability to score runs. Let me know your thoughts below. Is this a concern of yours? Do you think that they'll map things out and they'll get it together before the postseason starts? Guys, listen, I appreciate each and every last one of you that have followed this channel, continue to follow this channel, that continue to watch the videos whenever they drop. Make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. And also, I didn't forget, we're going to go ahead and fly that W. That's right. Every single time the Chicago Cubs win a game or win a series, we fly the W right here on Chicago Cubs Central, your number one spot for all things Chicago Cubs. Until next time, peace.
Thank you for watching another episode of Chicago Cubs Central, the number one spot for all Chicago Cubs content. Remember to like, share, subscribe for more Cubs content.